The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans. Season 7 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Time Bomb Trading, the Canadian distributor of Stance, Dragon, 32, and much more, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Time Bomb Trading distributes 32 up in Canada, and the new Spring Break Powder Bib Pant ignites a new era of high-performance collaboration. Designed to the exact specifications of Corey Smith, 32 set out to build the perfect Deep Pal bib. Featuring their Pinnacle 32 Repel 20K Dura Stretch fabric, their exclusive Reactor Mesh thermo-responsive lining, dual hip venting, and full front zip design, the Spring Break Powder Bib blends timeless style with critical white room performance. 32's not messing around with these bibs. All critical seams are triple stitched and the style is on point. Check the Spring Break Powder Bib at your local 32 dealer or at 32.com. Support also comes from Grouse Mountain, Mount Seymour, New Green Superfood Drink, Volcom Outerwear, Intuition Liners, and GoPro. Thanks to everyone who supports the show. Trent Bush has deeper roots in snowboarding than pretty much anyone. Along with his brother Troy, Trent has designed clothing in almost every era of snowboarding. They started Twist Clothing together just out of high school, and it was a game changer. Then he and his brother went on to design outerwear for Burton. We're talking Analog and Ronin era Burton designing. Then it was Section Outerwear with Mark Frank Montoya. Tech9, Sound, and Nomis were all at one time brands that Trent had his hand in running. And currently, he's the founder and co-CEO of Artilect, a new first layer and outerwear brand that's headquartered out of Boulder, Colorado.
It wasn't just sort of metaphorically a middle ground, it literally was a middle ground. So, the Worlds, of course, and the contests, and all the way through the King of the Mountain contest, all the early contests, it was the East Coast and the West Coast and Northwest and Tahoe and Utah and, everybody literally coming together
Rad.
In the same place. And some of the people coming over from overseas at the time.
Yep.
It was, those early contests, the Worlds in particular, was exactly where you would, for the first time, see what everybody had been working on for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody come with their new equipment. There's no internet.
Right.
There were no magazines.
Right.
You know what I mean? Literally. I mean, there was ISM, but it was where people would bring out their latest stuff, where people would show the new tricks, where it was a really, honestly kind of magical time, thinking back on it.
Yeah. Talking with Kevin Kinnear about the 86 Worlds, I got a feel for what it was like to be someone trying to start a magazine there that doesn't know how to dress and is walking through the snow under the lift, hoping people aren't going to throw snowballs at them and not knowing how to snowboard at all. But what was it like for somebody that was into snowboarding?
It was the same thing, because it was not only would you see the equipment and the stuff, you would see the people, of course, right? And for me, working in a snowboard shop at that point, one of the earliest, at Wave Rave in Boulder, which then spun out to be the, Tangent, the current Wave Rave and all of that was a Tangent, but the original was in Boulder in Colorado. A lot of the people, again, your little Boulder posse you've been interviewing of Dowd and Pappas Brothers and Delaney's and Tim Wendell and all of these guys came out of that era and that wave. But those, so I was around those guys all the time because they were on the Wave Rave team, but going to the Worlds, meeting Kidwell. I mean, for me, that was insane. Meeting Palmer, right? Meeting Damien. The Burt Lamars of the world, Craig Kellys of the world. I mean, everybody was there. And there was of course there was competitiveness and all of that, but there was also just this, it was kids having fun sort of mentality.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I mean, there were snowball fights.
Yeah.
I've got incredible footage I took, I think at the 87 Worlds of, Tim Wendell being interviewed by Brett from Wave Rave, and a snowball hits him in the face, and you look over, and it's I don't even remember who it was that threw the snowball, but it was It was like
amazing.
Craig Keller. So it was hilarious.
Totally.
And so, but there was just like a really cool spirit. And that's actually, the story I didn't tell you was the minute I decided that I was actually going to be in the snowboard industry, or that was going to be my life and my career.
Yeah.
It was at the 87 Worlds, and I'd gone up with Wave Rave with Brett Conrad, who owned Wave Rave, and we had rented a condo. And the night before the contest, and maybe they were athletes, but they were snowboarders, right?
Yeah.
And we had a party in the condo, and I was 16, I think.
Oh, wow.
And I may have been 15. I don't know exactly. No, 16 I was. And there's Damien, there's the whole Wave Rave team, there's Palmer. Everybody's drinking this whole thing, and I'm just like sitting in this room, and I remember distinctly looking around the room and looking at all of my heroes, like literally all of them. And I'm like this 16-year-old kid. I'm like, you can do this? Like, you can actually live like this and have this much fun, and everybody's having like just this amazing time. So we go next day, go to the contest, the contest happens or whatever. We come back, and all of our gear, everything's on the patio or on the deck. And we had gotten kicked out of this condo for having this party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my mind was just blown. I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And I've done it ever since, literally ever since.
It's amazing.
In one way or another.
Yeah. So what, at 16 years old, how far off from starting your first company are you? Did you have a short stint as or a long stint as like a pro rider that was getting shots and going in contests and placing and doing all that stuff?
No, I didn't. I wanted to be. And that was sort of the other sort of divergent point in my life, because I really, really wanted to be.
Yeah.
I was just too young to be part of that first wave.
Yeah.
Of riders.
Yeah. And
then, I guess I wasn't just too old for the other side, but at that point I'd already been working at Wave Rave, doing all of that. And I just needed to go that direction and kind of into the industry side. And I was still really riding a lot, and I still ride as much as I possibly can. But back then I was, but I don't think I had the talent.
Right.
Like some people have it and some people don't.
Well, I thought I had it and I didn't. So like there's the.
Well, there were days I thought I had it.
Yeah.
There's still days I think I have it.
Knowing you don't is good. Yeah, there's me too. I don't know when it dissolved, but it's very
only
recently.
When the snow is deep.
Very recently it dissolved that I'm not going to do a pro part.
Yeah. There was one person actually. So Adam Merriman.
Yeah.
So again, local Boulder kid.
Yeah.
And I think he's either a year or 2 years younger than me. And I remember going up to Eldora. We used to go and dig the pipe and do the whole thing. Used to skip school in high school and go do that. And I just remember being up there thinking I was like actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And then little Adam Merriman, who's like this stringy little kid, like literally a little kid. He was probably 14.
Yeah.
Just smokes any idea of me being good. And I'm just like, okay, well, probably not. So then I started working on the Wave Rave apparel line and all that stuff when that started.
That's very early.
It's super early, yeah. And so then I kind of went that way. And so to answer the question, I was probably, we started, so Wave Rave, 80, 86, 87, 88. So we started Twist, which was our first, my brother and myself and a friend of Monty who also worked at Wave Rave. We started that in 89.
That's so early.
Yeah, in high school.
Yeah, that's so early.
Yeah, using all the roll ends of all the Wave Rave.
That's how you made it?
Yeah, we made it. We actually stitched it in down. Well, my mom made our first samples in the basement. Yeah, totally.
That's so awesome.
But there used to be a pretty thriving sewing industry in Colorado because so much ski wear and things were made here. And we actually made fleece hoodies and that stuff downtown Boulder, just behind the grocery store. There was a sewing place.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you redesign a hoodie? I talked about this with Keir and Ernie that, design. I'm like, oh, you guys designed the headphones, for Keir? And Keir goes, yeah, we designed them. the way you design in snowboarding, which is you go to a store, you buy your favorite headphones, you give them to somebody and say, make me these that look a little different.
Yeah, totally.
So did you guys do some design with the early cut and sew pieces that were where you're like, we're going to improve on what's here. We're going to make something that we like better than, the Wave Rave, Clown Pounce, or whatever was going on.
Well, that was the whole
Wave
thing.
Rave
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Wave Rave.
it was everywhere.
It was the entire industry was.
Quimbola, man.
It was all
West Beach.
It just wasn't what we wanted. I mean, my brother and I and Amani and the guys that started Twist, we were skateboarders.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And we weren't really half pipe skaters. We were street skaters.
Right.
And so that was the whole drive was, okay, we want to be skateboarding on snow. We're not surfers. Because we live in Colorado, like we're not surfers, right?
Right.
We had half pipes and all that stuff, but that just wasn't our thing. So we were on this whole sort of next, the new thing, which was street skating and like, olling up curbs, which was new at the time, like, believe it or not. Like, I mean, it was.
Yeah, no, I understand. I was there, man.
Yeah, no, you were there. Yeah. And so it was like, everything was changing so fast and everything was so new. And we just weren't, when you talk to, again, that generation ahead, we were talking about this earlier, 70s style skating, there were all kinds of things or half pipe or all of that was a thing. And then there was a real divergence of the mentality of street skating and the music that went around it and the
clothing.
Art and the culture and the clothing.
Because if you remember clothing at like, go watch a Bones Brigade video, right? They're in that California kind of, like surf trunks and Vans and, Christian Osoyoos got 16 T-shirts tied around them.
Around everything,
but those T-shirts are like neon and they're like surfy.
Totally.
They're not like black T-shirts. He's not like, wearing a Misfits shirt or something.
No, for sure.
Which is more like his style. But so if Christian Hosoi is in a bunch of neon stuff tied all around him and 10 swatches on his arm, that there's going to have to be a change for street skating to be street skating. Yeah. And the first thing you do is you take off all 10 of those watches and then you make your pants like you cut 2 pairs of pants and make one.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
And get a fireman jacket, like riding a fucking fireman coat or whatever.
That's totally it.
Yeah.
And so it was all driven out of that. And out of the music, the music thing particularly. Mm-hmm. I mean, punk rock and like all the things that were really happening. We had Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys is from Boulder.
Whoa, wow.
And so there was it's kind of weird. Like we were talking about like how much skate actually came out of Boulder with Kryptonics there and wallboards and all those.
I needed that. I needed that piece. I needed that Kryptonics piece because otherwise it just happened in a fishbowl. It didn't make sense.
Make no. Yeah. And so Kryptonics started because they were making mining. They made mining wheels.
Oh.
And so they found out how to make urethane for mining carts. Oh. And so then it just became a skate. Yeah,
then it's like a hub of the wheel. Like anybody that's in skateboarding that is on Kryptonics is going to come to the factory. They're going to work on things and they're going to see there's a scene here. Yeah. Because kids have access to the best wheels in the world.
And we would dumpster dive.
Yeah. And take
until they started locking the dumpster. And then the kid in my neighborhood had his dad worked at Kryptonics, so he opened his bedroom into a Kryptonics skate shop.
That's perfect.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point being for us, it was just all about what was changing, what was happening at the time, music, skateboarding again, skate culture, all of that stuff was just, that's who we were. And so in Boulder in particular, as soon as it became, the first snow, back before they used chemicals, they'd put sand on the streets, on the roads. Yeah. So there was a 6-month period of time where all of the streets and all the roads were covered in sand. Mm. So you literally couldn't skateboard.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to. And so then snowboarding, we started snowboarding super early in the whole thing, but there was that period, especially the late 80s, early 90s. Other guys, Tarquin Robbins, local, one of our really good friends.
Yeah.
There was this surge of people who all had the same mentality. Mm-hmm. People are coming from the Midwest, Dale Rayberg and Rowan Rogers and Nate Cole and that whole crew, of course. There were people coming from the West Coast or people coming from the East Coast converging in Summit County. So again, the next generation of that convergence of people coming from all over the place because they had seen Breckenridge on TV.
Totally.
you know,
a lot of people moved here to ride that half pipe, and then it wasn't here.
But what was here was stacks of snow, the early season whales, like all these things that where people who really wanted that skate sort of mentality, and
the stumps and shit that came out of here.
All of that.
Oh my God.
That all came out of here, and
big pants
and wide stance and cutting down boards and all of that. That was very uniquely driven out of Summit County.
Interesting.
And then it kind of found its way everywhere else.
Right.
But there was one season in particular where everybody cut down their boards.
Yep.
A lot of us took our high backs off.
Yes.
Yep. and T-bolted our boards because stances were super narrow.
To get 27-inch stances.
The best I ever did was 26.
Nice. Probably.
And I'm only
5'8".
So it's
I probably was 25, 26. Yeah.
I narrowed it off. I still ride like 24. But it's like
23.
So. I love it. But so again, it's just like that time. There was that early wave and the Worlds and all that stuff. Then there was that second wave, that whole new school thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we were doing Twist. It was just the very precursor of what turned into sort of this new school movement. And it's the thing that people have to understand, that there was no internet.
Right.
Like literally.
Yeah.
There was Transworld.
Totally.
There was still ISM, International Snowboard Magazine, and Snowboarder was there.
Yeah.
But they were very much California companies, California coverage.
Totally.
They weren't covering any of the stuff that we were doing.
Right.
And we had this whole crazy microcosm of stuff going on in Summit County. And that's what spun out of like what we were talking about then, like us trying to create the internet with mixtapes and magazines and calendars and
zines, big
and,
zines and small zines and
totally
and videos. Like that's what reached us. Like I had moved from the East Coast. I moved from Ontario, which is the middle of the country, kind of, to the West Coast.
Yeah,
and the videos were everything. Yeah. Like I remember seeing Roadkill. And then the next year being at Mount Baker and being like, I'm in the fucking video. Like, this is crazy. And like even being here, I get what the terrain is now. Like I get how that riding style came out of here mostly with the jibbing.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's a perfect place for, like people it's like a skate park.
Yeah. So
everybody's got these wide stances. They're hitting everything everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's a good vibe. It's a crazy place, man.
It is pretty crazy, and people love to hate Colorado, but it's like
I've never heard any Colorado hate, but
there's a fair amount of it, but whatever, it doesn't affect me. I still have just as much fun. But so we started that ourselves, and again I'm trying to think of what we actually had to really inspire us besides skate companies.
Twist was unique. The year that we brought it up to Canada, it was bold and it was new and it was not what we were used to.
It was a total.
It was fresh.
It was a total 180 from what anybody was used to because we didn't like what there was. That was all there was. But there was no Volcom. There was nothing special blend.
Mm-mm.
I mean, quite literally, there was nothing. And so all we could do is create the thing that we wanted, which was just a total rebellion against the stuff that we had.
Yeah, there was something going on. I remember we got it for a year and we got lots and it was great. And then I think we got relegated to like second tier the second year possibly, and then some stuff didn't arrive or the typical
probably
outerwear
absolutely probably
of like
you had 20-year-olds making your clothes.
we're going okay, well we accidentally ordered too much of the thing we don't want and we want the thing that sold out right away, so give us a bunch of that, and then you go, hey, it's already sold out everywhere.
I don't know.
You can't get any more.
I don't know.
I do remember it being like we're not talking about clear outs or closeouts or anything. That's everything that you make gets sold full price through retailers, right?
That was the only place. That's the only way you could sell it.
Yeah.
Retailers were the only thing that there was, or maybe you could do there were a couple of mail order catalogs, I guess, but there was again no internet. But so we did in the early 90s. We started, and like Tarquin was a huge influence, huge innovator, of course, and again part of that next wave. Quin Sandvold, like all of those, the other Boulder kids that kind of went off and did a lot of really cool stuff and influenced us, and we all were hanging out together. They were riding for us, whatever, and working together. But then Justin Hasenek moved to Boulder. Cool. And that was a really interesting thing because we were doing Twist and just sort of, we had opened up an office above a restaurant that I showed you.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember exactly how he just kind of assimilated into what we were doing.
Was he already a photographer at that point?
He was a photographer, so he was doing the calendars. So he was doing Vertical Addictions.
Vertical Addictions, right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so, he was doing that. He wasn't doing, nobody was really doing a whole lot of video. There were the
Mac Dog and Standard, right.
In like local covering that thing. And so
we
started doing movies, the Twist movies.
What was the first Twist movie?
It was just the Twist promotional video, it was called, and that was we filmed it in 1990.
Yeah. And
it came out in 1991.
Yeah.
And it was a really mixed bag because again, that was right at that turning point. So we had, we had the craziest team that just, it was just friends. So Tim Wendell is in the video.
Oh, wow.
And he's on the end of sort of his pro
I saw him in
thing.
1990 and he came out, he did like an attempt at a hand plant and he flew off into the bushes and then he picked up his board and went into the chalet. Like, this place sucks.
and he's a good friend. But so we were, we still had some of that. Brian Delaney, so Kevin's little brother.
Yep.
And these are all just people we grew up with, went to high school with. Tarquin, like that was that crew. And then we met Justin and he started working out of our office and then he was staff photographer for Snowboarder.
Yep.
At the same time.
Yeah.
And then he just became our team manager.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, it was insane. And so then that's when that wave of Nate Cole and Jay Nelson, I still have his sponsor me tape, which is super funny. Awesome. Gilligan, Yoder, of course, Fred Brian Yoder, Harper. I could just keep going down the list, and there were so many people who rode for us at that time. But that's how Justin got involved. So then our first real video, was Anthem.
It was a favorite, and we watched it. Like I could quote all the shit from it. Totally. You guys with sponsors not buying ad space, go find another jump.
Puffy and Spray.
Yeah, unreal, dude. Like that was our legit. Like you'd watch that and then you'd go out and try those tricks.
Yeah, totally. And there was actually some really good stuff in there.
Really good stuff, but mostly there was good style.
Yeah,
and there was like a cultural message of like, hey, this is who we're going to be now. Yeah. This is what we are as a culture. We're going to be a bit fucking badass.
Yeah.
And we're not going to listen to shitty, stupid rules.
Yeah.
And like we're skaters on the snow.
We were not. Yeah. It's actually really funny, and this is going to sound terrible. I remember one of those years, man, it might have been the year that, that Palmer beat Craig Kelly in the half pipe. Was that 91 or 92?
It's like 91 or maybe 92.
Yeah. I just remember thinking, oh, they're still doing the Worlds? like quite like literally. And that's how far things had changed from that changing my life to me just not paying any attention to organized snowboarding in any respect, from the contest to the magazines to everything. And so that's we did it all ourselves.
Your team isn't giving you a resume saying I got 8th at the Worlds or whatever.
No, they'd be like, what's the Worlds?
Yeah.
Totally.
What contests have you been to? None.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't do those suck.
And I think that was the big pivot, actually, now thinking about it. Now you bring that up. It's just like, snowboarding going from a discipline in a lot of ways, actually, even of skiing.
Yep.
Bumps contests and slalom and GS, and you had to do everything.
Right.
You had to. You literally were forced to do all the disciplines,
which is so silly. The more I hear people talk about it, the more crazy it is. Like they would have to engineer a contest so that the race was first, so that they could disqualify people from the pipe if they didn't ride in the race. They didn't do it the other way around. Like, hey, you don't get to race if you don't go in that half
they did
pipe.
it first, and you had to ride. You had to be in the bumps contest, and it's just like the moguls contest.
It's so rude. It's mean. It's not even. It just shows a lack of understanding of what's actually happening in the culture.
But if you look at the lineage and where it came from that. I mean, it came from the ski disciplines, of course.
And they're trying to be legit too, right? Like
totally.
they're just trying to be legit. Like, hey, look at us. We do what you do, and
that was a big,
and everybody does.
That was a big part of it, and also those early contests too. I mean, there weren't. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, you could make a half pipe if you got some shovels and dug them, and we did that.
Yeah.
But it was very lackluster.
Sure.
Early pipe contests, like the early worlds contests, the best stuff going on were the side hits and the jumps that everyone was building, and Sean Farmer doing backflips and things that I'd never seen before in my life.
Absolutely.
And everybody lining up all day, just lapping these hits, and all the people that were there, because everybody that was there was a snowboarder. There weren't like spectators. There was no hospitality tent. There were no free drinks, and so everybody was there for that. And so people would like begrudgingly go take their run, right? Because they got called, like they were up, and then they would come back and keep. Yeah,
everybody
keep hitting
but
the
Craig
quarter pipe
and Bert, and like if you'd see those guys training gates, and you'd be like, how lame! They're taking it seriously. Like this is fun. This is just fun stuff. Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, so you get a picture of what that was.
But
all
I think
about.
that's a perfect pivot. Is that if you don't force your team to be in that pigeonhole, like, look, our guys, like when you think about the Burton team coming in like spandex uniforms,
totally.
Like when Tom Burt's talking about that. Oh, you didn't see the movie Dear Rider, but
not yet.
He talks about it, and you could just see in his face that, the West Coast guys see the Burton team and they're in a uniform.
Yeah.
And the uniform is like a spandex thing.
Totally.
It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, totally. Those bright red performer speed suits.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, granted, sure, the racers wear speed suits. That's something that they do. But I've definitely seen people race in regular clothing and win.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, totally. And again, like at that point too, we were so far past the caring about any sort. It was one-upping each other, free riding, and people were just making up the craziest stuff because nothing. It was like, I mean, talking about earlier about like when people learned that they could ollie a skateboard on flat ground. Yeah. Like that was what snowboarding was at that time because everything was new. Mm-hmm. And somebody would hit something and it was insane. Then somebody else would try to hit it switch. And it was, you know what I mean? It was just like,
absolutely.
It was always one-upmanship. Yeah. But none of that one-upmanship was like happening on the slalom course. Like it was, right? You know what I mean? So our whole crew was just about literally like crewing up and just going everywhere. Yeah. Exploring everything. That's where all the stumps and the rainbows and all the things that were found in all these different places. It wasn't, again, from training gates. It was from getting out there and actually trying to skateboard on snow.
And part of it probably, just guessing here, but part of it's probably not pretending like the party wasn't a big part of the gathering. You know what I mean? Like Craig going to bed to get a good night's sleep to try and win the overall title the next day is missing like the key element of those events in some ways, right? Like the anthem stuff encouraged us to go out in a crew, ride around, drink beers on the lift.
Yeah, well, that's because that was what it was. Yeah, that was the fun of it. Yes. And for us, and it was always, and for me, even to this day, it's about the whole 24 hours. Mm-hmm. It's not about the 3-hour skate session or about the 5 hours on the mountain. Yes. Because, that's super fun and that's all part of it. But so are the pictures and the nachos. Totally. You know what I mean? And absolutely. And then going out at night and doing all that stuff. And going out and being hungover and doing it all over. I mean, it was the music you listened to. It was the places you hung out. It was the girls you met. Like, it was all part of it. There was no money in it. And there was money, though, for, again, the organized side of things. And, of course, Craig and, all of those guys, there was prize money, and that they were professionals. And it was a job that they loved, but there was a paycheck. Yeah. For us, I mean, we lived on Taco Bell and lived on the floor because that's all we had to support. Yeah. And and even, the early days of Twist and stuff, we didn't pay ourselves like anything. I remember going to the SIA show, like the 1991 SIA show in Vegas, and being so excited because we got to eat buffet every night. At Circus or at Excalibur. Yeah. Like, this wasn't even like Caesars. This is
I've eaten at both of those.
Exactly. This wasn't the lobster buffet at Caesars. This was the, back then, which was the kind of gold standard of buffets. But no, I mean, so, we did it because we loved it. And we were absolutely convinced that the kind of snowboarding we were doing was what the future represented.
Yeah, it was progression.
It was progression, and it was. And again, it was that whole lifestyle part of it. So those early shows, the, SIA shows, the events, even if there were contests and things and people were in town, like, you would go and have fun. They would go do the contest, and we would, but again, it was that whole 24-hour thing. And that's where, like, Breckenridge became that epicenter early of literally like 24-hour lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was super, super fun. There was at all times.
There was a hike pipe during one era of Breckenridge that I heard about, like, that had lights on it all night or something. I think Jimmy Scott would go there.
Oh, there were a lot of lit up pipes. They had one at Keystone. They had one at Vail.
Rad.
Yeah, no, totally.
Oh, that's super rad.
They were super, and they were like the one at Vail, the gondola. It was like you could hike it, of course. But you could also. Oh, actually, you took the gondola up. That's right, and then you would hike it. Yeah, and I think they had a rope tow. I don't know, or a little chairlift. But and Keystone, same thing. I mean, there were
super rad,
super night pipes, night parks, and all that.
I think one of the best things about linking up with someone like Justin is that the symbiotic relationship happens where the better the riders get, the more money he makes. Yeah, and the more money he makes, the more money the riders make. Because if he's submitting more, they're getting photo incentives, they're getting sponsorship deals, and he's getting paid for editorial, and he's getting paid by the companies for product shots and for ad shots, and
and we were paying him as the team manager, and he actually became part of the company with he was a partner in the company, no, for sure, it was super beneficial for us. I mean, it was, and because of especially being sort of one of the top, staff photographers at Snowboarder, he was also traveling globally. Right. So he's the one that put Ingmar on our team. Sick. Yeah. Or Daniel Frank, Jakob, like, I mean, there was a whole crew of Europeans, Jenny Vara, just so many people that we would have never even really known who they were. So like the Ingmar shot. Yeah. The famous. Yeah. He's wearing twist pants. Nobody knows that, but it's like it was really, really cool that we were able to do that.
That was one of the failings of the what we were asking for as snowboarders was that, in the past, Wave Rave, it said Wave Rave on the knees. You know what I mean? West Beach, there was the West Beach logo on the knees. You knew what pants it was from, very distinct design stuff like the Burton Freestyle stuff. Yeah. And Twist had very small logos on purpose.
Totally,
right?
Totally on purpose, because that's how, like, my skate stuff didn't have logos all over it. Right. My plain black T-shirt and my jeans, didn't have logos on it. And so that, again, it was just an extension of that. Yeah. And again, it was all rebellion against everything else that was going on, because everything else was so neon and logoed and crazy.
Totally.
We're just like, this is not who we
Subtle.
are and what we want to do.
Little
Totally.
hits
And we also
down here,
we couldn't do some of those things because we weren't like working with like the best factories, you know.
Sure.
We're screen printing things ourselves.
Nice.
So it was super DIY. And what we did do, like if we put something on it, we put like with Evan Hecox we were talking about. So Evan, who went on to do, be Chocolate Skateboards main artist for decades and worked with Nike and Adidas and all the stuff. But we met him, I was 18, he was 19, I think, maybe 19 and 20. So he became part of the early Twist crew too. So he was our first artist of art that we weren't doing ourselves.
There's an aesthetic.
And so we would put
so
little pieces of like a little face that he'd draw.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the logo.
Totally.
Instead of like the words, you know. Like we rarely put the words Twist on anything. We had that early crown logo.
Yep.
That had kind of twist in the crown, but then after that, it really just became, we almost, I don't think we really almost put the words Twist on the outside of anything.
It's so incredible to think of, you know, what the reality of Twist was for us at the shop was a bunch of boxes come in, we put it on the rack, it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, that's like, it wasn't like, we didn't have a relationship with you where we could get restocked and do all that stuff. So then the shop later on gets filled with things
with
that
other
are
stuff
that are just available.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times things that are available are the stuff that didn't sell. So the store looks the best in November, September, October, November. I can remember pushing for September because people would come in.
Yeah.
The shop would switch over to a water ski shop.
Oh yeah.
So people would come in September and go, "Oh shit, there used to be a snowboard shop around here somewhere. Do you know where that is?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's actually yes. Come back.
That'll
in
be
like
us
2
in
weeks."
October. And
Yeah.
No, totally.
Yeah. So like it is crazy how quickly. And I'm not blowing smoke. I'm just saying when you had something that hot in snowboarding, it just would vanish out into the ether. And it's not like people just from the magazines knew and would see your ads and come in and say, I want that. It was like they'd look at all the jackets and they go, oh, fuck, I want that thing. And so just whoever came in the shop who was lucky enough to need a jacket early on when it first showed up, it all got sold to just the general public.
It was always just the stuff that, again, it was just, there was just something different about it. And it was great. And we started that sunglass line. We did all kinds of things. We did some of the earliest women's outerwear. We did, we did Tuesday, which was with Tina and Shannon. After they had done prom, we did the women's clothing company. We did Titan. Because again, we Twist was a certain thing, a certain aesthetic for a certain group of shops and all of that, but snowboarding was getting really big. And so we had to have something that was able to touch a little bit more of that broad thing that we were talking about,
Absolutely.
but we didn't want it to lose that special side of it. And so Titan was amazing because that's what we got to bring on, you know, again, spanning generations. So Mark Frank,
sick,
of course, was like, and he was, I mean, we gave him stuff with Twist when he was like probably 16 or 17.
Yeah.
But we actually sponsored him and Kurt Wastel. Palmer was on Rankwit.
Oh.
I mean, there was a crew on Titan as well. And then that whole thing just sort of, it kind of imploded. And then there were versions of Twist, and there remain versions of Twist out in the marketplace. That, I mean, it's had like 9 lives.
Yeah.
So there are different versions of it after we had kind of lost it.
What happens? Like, because I know Justin basically starts Absinthe. I remember when the video came out, and it was called Absinthe.
It was called Absinthe, and
by Vertical Addictions
it was.
There was some time where he was doing JAH stuff, right?
Like, because Justin Alexander Hasanek is his name, so it's Jaw.
Yeah,
so that's his nickname.
Jaw stuff.
Jaw.
Okay.
And so, so we were making the Twist movies. Anthem. So Anthem was the second one. Then we did like a promo cut of that for Twist. Then we did Color. and The Gift.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one in the series was, I don't know if it was Absinthe or it was Black Box. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah,
both.
totally. And so
it might have been Black Box first. And
I
then
think it was.
Absinthe.
I think Black Box was the next version. So it was
Oh, it
all
could
the
have been.
Twist
Right.
Riders,
Right,
but
right,
it wasn't a Twist movie.
right,
And so that's when he switched it over to Absinthe.
Yep.
And so we didn't. I mean, again, we were literally kids in a world that kids didn't start brands.
Sure.
And so we didn't know how to finance. We didn't have money.
Right.
We didn't come from money. We did our best. It was beg, borrowing, stealing. We grew it to be actually pretty big. And from a specialty perspective, in store penetration, we were actually second to Burton in the amount of specialty stores we were in, which nobody, again, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
But we literally had to make sort of deals with the devil, and not actually, but
I know what you're saying. What about Japan? Did you have a couple of years where Japan would prepay?
Japan was insane.
Yeah.
No, Japan was like incredible, but
Yep.
we ended up being financed out of Japan at the end.
Yeah. Which happened to a lot of companies.
Same guys that financed Division 23.
Yep.
And then the Japanese economy hit the skids in 96.
The yen tanked.
Yeah, and they were a public company, and they basically just said, "Hey, you guys," and we had, you operate for most of the year in a seasonal business.
Yep.
Spending lots of money.
Totally.
And then you make all your stuff and you sell it to shops like yours, and you get the money back. And
Yeah.
so we had already operated for 8 months. I don't even know what it was. So we were millions in the hole, and which then comes back when we make it and ship it, and the whole thing.
Right,
and so,
totally.
Long story short, the board of directors, the shareholders said, "You guys need to concentrate on your core business." They were a car accessory company, not a snowboarding company. It was kind of a hobby, and so they're just like, "Oh yeah, we can't keep financing it. So just send us a check, basically, for the money you owe us, and you'll get to keep going." And we didn't have any money like that. I mean, there's not even close, and we had no resources. We had like a week. They gave us like a week.
Oh shit.
And so we literally were at we had relaunched the sunglass line with Interview magazine at Spy Bar in New York City, like the highest of high, this unbelievable party. And then we literally got the phone call from Japan like 3 days later. So it was like if you're believing your own hype, nothing slaps you in the face as hard as losing everything from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low in like 3 days. And so that was the end. We traded our personal guarantees for the trademarks.
Oh wow!
So we got out of it. Troy and I got out of it clean. And it was really, that was our baby, right?
Yeah.
And we brought so many people along for the ride, and Justin and Evan and Lisa Hudson and all these people who were intimately involved with the brand, all the riders, because we had given each of them, pledging them that when this thing sells, everybody's going to get taken care of, like the whole thing, because they were all our best friends.
Yeah.
Some of our riders were older than me.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was crushing. It was like literally like heartbreaking. You know what I mean?
Man.
Yeah. And it was, and I was on the board of directors at SIA at that point. And so it was me, it was Jake Burton, and then a bunch of ski dudes. And I don't think there were any other, I'm trying to think if there were any other snowboard people. But so I got to know Jake. I knew him from the shop days and Wave Rave and all that stuff, but not very well, but I got to know him through the board of directors. So when Twist finally was done in 2 or 3 weeks later, we flew out to Jake's house on Long Island to go talk to him about basically kind of Twist Part 2-ish, and going and doing Burton's outerwear. And so
what was that like coming into Burton? Was there already a hierarchy of designers or stuff? Had they hired outside of Burton, consultants to like turn ski clothes into snowboard clothes at that point?
They were running it from inside, but again, it was it was so weird because it was like, again, and it was just, it was exactly kind of some of the stuff that we had been rebelling against.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
It's still Burton. Yeah, like
and
the Burton freestyle pant.
Oh, yeah, and the set without soak and all of the things that they were doing and the super short jackets and all this stuff. And it's just, it was wild. And they had an amazing crew there. But the thing about it was so formulaic. They had, I'm trying to remember all the Trilight, which then became Trilight AK, which then just became AK.
Okay.
They had Universe and Tempest, and they had all these little weird divisions of apparel that made sense to them.
Right,
because it's in the marketplace.
Because it was kind of like your different hierarchies of waterproofness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so this is called a whatever Tempest. It's
exactly, and done for
stuff.
different styles of riding as well.
Right.
And the thing is that that BioLite, which was the most progressive freestyle stuff, was also the cheapest.
Burton BioLite.
Yeah.
Right. So they and then if it's the cheapest, then it's also the least waterproof.
It's the worst performance, but it's supposed to be the highest style.
So that's what they're saying, is they're kind of saying like, look, you scrub kids on the fucking
a little
mountain. Like, we know you can't afford shit, so we're gonna make you a cheaper jacket that you can scrape together some money.
But even their riders, I mean, the BioLite riders at that time, it was Jeffy Anderson.
Wow.
And Gooch.
Wow.
And there were, I know, like Terry was on Universe and Dave Downing was in Universe. Like that was a different part. Yep. But so that's when we cooked up Analog, because we coming in, it was just like it's just like all of these rules, and we also couldn't make anything that was really good, but that was also cool, and so everything had to fit into a box and into a rule.
Right.
And so we basically Troy and I and Greg Dakishin, and some of the riders, and we were just kind of like coming up with like these ideas of, well, shit, like we really want to do something that isn't fitting into this formula.
Yes.
And that we can make stuff that's not $179. Like, why can't we make a super red jacket out of Gore-Tex that isn't AK, or Trilight AK or whatever it was at the time? Like, we were trying to like really kind of push the needle and again try to not really have those rules. So that's where Analog was born out of. And for us, it was like kind of like Twist Part 2. And we started with BioLite. We did a BioLite X jacket and the BioLite Y jacket, because they wouldn't let us do it.
Yeah. And
so it took a lot of talking them into it. And I remember distinctly at one of the round tables. So we used to do these rider round tables at
they still do
Jake's
them.
barn. Yeah, of course.
Yep.
And we were sitting there during the BioLite round table. And we had just sort of gone off the reservation and like made some things ourselves.
Nice.
that were, like a snorkel jacket, like a parka, and like all these things. And
sick.
And Jeffy Anderson like literally jumped up on the table, and Jake was in the round table, and Jeffy's like, oh my God, that's what I've wanted the whole time. That's the whole thing.
Yep.
And so that was super cool, because Jake's, the best thing he ever did was always listen to the riders. Right. And that was something that there was such a moment that I don't think there had ever been that level of excitement in a round table ever. And so that was sort of the turning point, even though the rest of sort of the organization, the sales organization, they did it, the first 2 years didn't really like it or want it.
Yeah. So they're like internally fighting against this thing that any snowboarder that was exposed to it, like myself, for example, Jeff Martino had his sample sale.
Yeah.
And I bought pretty much everything in my size of Analog.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, it spoke to me.
Because nobody else wanted it.
Because it was like, it was out there.
It was out there,
yeah. Which is exactly what you want. It's like, you show up to the mountain and you're wearing the same jacket as someone else. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
Especially if the guy's like, a beginner.
Yeah.
And he's got your same kit and you're like, you got a twin there. Yeah. No, the Analog stuff was risque.
It was, and
it was dope.
But even the earliest stuff was actually pretty simple.
Okay.
It was the same kind of thing. Like, it was actually, I mean, you look at it, there was art on it. I mean, it was literally Twist Part 2, continued, and no, so that was super cool, and did that for a few years, and then no regrets whatsoever. Troy and I lived in Boulder. Still, we commuted.
Yeah.
And we had our little design office in Boulder.
You know what? I'm going to have to cut all that out because it wasn't analog. I'm thinking of Ronix Ronin.
Oh yeah,
Ronin came out. So that's after, right?
Yeah, that was
analog. Eventually,
analog, but it
becomes kind of AK or something.
Analog became its own thing.
Okay,
and it became sort of the Burton action sports brand.
It's still going
and
right now.
Streetwear.
Right. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not like a super good Burton historian because
totally.
I didn't have access to this stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to do with that Ronin stuff?
We designed Ronin. We did.
That was the shit that was risque. That was like holy fuck, these guys have lost their minds, and also in the best way possible.
Yeah, Ronin was, and that was Greg's special baby. So Ronin was very much Greg Bakishin. Like
that shit was like, it wasn't Burton at all. It was like if Burton was forced to make something.
Yeah,
they just, I could see people like frowning about those pieces.
There was a lot of stuff in there that was pretty crazy. And analog was it was just the first departure,
the precursor to some of the more out there stuff.
Yeah, but some of the more out there stuff really did make it into analog, and analog became almost the whole separate branch.
Jeffy with the big jacket.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And those orange suits, the early orange suits.
Yeah,
and all that
yeah.
stuff. That was all analog stuff.
That was Jay Brown.
Yep, Jason Brown. Yeah, 100%. He was there.
Yeah,
of course.
Loving that.
Chris
era.
Brown.
Oh shit,
Roman.
Roman.
And God, there were a lot of.
Yeah, there's guys shouting
really
right now,
good.
I was there.
Yeah, I know, totally.
Yeah, it's that sometimes the podcast turns into that, just like a name remembering.
Oh yeah, no,
game.
And
it's impossible.
Probably, list and keep going on and on about lists. But so then we did that for a number of years, and it was interesting because, Burton was a big snowboarding company. What our role had become was not. It didn't feel really that it revolved around snowboarding so much as traveling a lot.
Okay.
Going to factories, going to events,
right.
Going to Japan, super fun things. I'm not going to lie, but it didn't feel as much about snowboarding. And I was like dyed in the wool, like love snowboarding.
I got you.
And it was more because we weren't riders.
Right.
So
what about the Burton?
We got kind of away from it,
10-inch rule or whatever it is. As soon as that snow falls, that the whole office closes down and everyone goes riding.
That happens.
Yeah.
Oh no, totally. And I'm not. There were plenty, of course, of snowboarders, but at Burton, and it's a snowboarding company.
Yeah.
But for my role, I'm saying, was not as
you got too deep into
Twist
the
was so,
into the guts.
Well,
yeah.
Twist was so. It was a crew, and it was 24 hours, and it was we were doing product, but we were doing sales, we were doing marketing, because it was all part of it, And when we got to Burton, Troy and I, we only focused on designing apparel.
So
and gloves and things like that, and so
you're
we just
searching for materials, and you're doing all
and
this
totally,
stuff.
and which I still do that to today. But I love it. Goes back to that whole 24-hour mentality of sort of snowboarding or skateboarding, but it's the same thing on the work side of it. We were so like one note that it just started getting old, and I think probably like even my being that into it was just on the wane. So Troy and I left, and that's when we started Section with Mark Frank and did that whole thing.
That was you guys too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that was us. So we did that for again number of years, and that's
so.
When
you move back here? Like, were you living in?
We were living in Boulder, and we were commuting. Every month, every couple of months, whatever it was, because we would have our deliverables. We would do it out of Boulder, and then we would go back and present everything and do everything with the team there.
Yeah.
I just, I was so in love with snowboarding the whole thing that I just loved it here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was burning you out. Right.
It was, and I just loved to be, and so we were here the kind of that whole time. But so we started section out of Boulder. Yeah. And then, and that's when we sponsored actually Ethan 48 Eastone.
Yeah.
When he was on Titan back in the day with Marco and Kurt Wastel and all of that, when he started Tech 9 in Vail. And so then they were kind of having the same issues of being a small little tiny.
Is he doing that with
company.
his dad?
With his dad.
I met his dad.
Yeah,
I met
Ray.
him and his dad.
Yeah.
Ray was the main guy
totally.
when Murray up in Vancouver was doing Tech 9 across Canada.
Totally.
What a dude.
Yeah. And so we but they were kind of having a hard time with like the cash flow and all that stuff, and so then we brought them into the fold. So
cool.
It was like Section and Tech 9.
Yeah.
And then we met the Chamberlain brothers at ISPO. So Simone and Matt and those guys, and they were doing Nomis, and they were same thing. They needed to find ways to grow, and so we brought them into the fold. I mean, it was just like this.
So Nomis came in under a branding thing with you guys.
Yeah. With me and then with Ethan, and you know, and again, those were weird years in snowboarding because it was such a business. And
Nomis went insane. Insane.
Yeah, it got really big. And really, insane. And like the amount of hoodies that we were selling was like, it was really crazy. And you literally, like, you couldn't make enough hoodies, like just straight honest, and enough variations weird. And enough, you know, all that stuff. And, and so that, I mean, so again, it's just like, you know, what decade is it? The 80s, the 90s, the 2000s? Like, always been trying to sort of push, in snowboarding and do all that kind of stuff. And so that kind of brings us to where we're sitting now, because it's like through that whole process and through being like front row seat to snowboarding from literally the earliest days of you know, pre-edges, pre-high backs, pre-whatever. And feeling the whole time, because I was sort of a front row seat of the whole thing, just always being the super fan of, you know, of Tom Sims and of what Jake was doing and all these different people were doing, Chucky Barfoot and what, like all these guys, and nobody was paying any attention to it, it felt like. And so I just started throwing stuff in the basement, throwing stuff in the closet, throwing stuff, you know, whatever I could get, with this intention of always doing something that would sort of not just show like all this cool stuff, but actually sort of tell the story and memorialize what actually happened for snowboarding to get from there to here.
That's rad.
Yeah, and so that's when I started the museum project, trying for years and years to do it on my own. But people don't pay money to go see snowboards.
Yet,
you know,
you've been talking about this whole time about how because of how early you got into it. You know what I mean? Like the frustration with like, yeah, I mean, people come and look at it, but they're not going to pay money because they don't understand how historically significant each of these pieces is. Yeah. But every kind of year, it gets like more and more interest in where did this thing come from? Yeah. And I mean, the more I dig into it, the more of these incredible personalities like Steve Link.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I mean, like I always knew Farmer was Farmer, but I didn't realize who Farmer was, you know?
No, totally.
Like it's insane. Yeah. And and Dimitri, and there is a lot to snowboard history.
There's a ton. And the nice thing about it is almost all of it is recent enough that you can actually document it. And so starting in I do remember this, and I know I kind of gloss over like contests and all that stuff in that one time, but there was even during that period of time, I had friends, a lot of rider friends, who were kind of being not swept under the carpet, but just didn't. They were old school, right? Yeah. And this whole new school thing was happening, and so I'm like, I'm going to make sure that people don't forget about some of these people in particular. Who snowboarding would not even be close to the same without them. but people literally don't know who they are or what their names. And you're doing an amazing job of that.
Thank you very much.
Keeping those stories alive.
They're my favorite type of stories.
Yeah.
Is to find out that Dave Dowd competed in the X Games till he was 39.
Yeah.
Because for me, Dave Dowd was what I was exposed to with Dave Dowd, which was, like an ice ski, shot of him doing, a sucked up air in some powder somewhere.
Yeah.
Or like
like a hard boot in front, a soft boot in back. Yeah.
And finding out that George Pappas had the opposite setup because he was goofy and Dave was regular. So they shared two pairs of boots.
Exactly.
Isn't that insane?
No,
it's so great. We need to know these things.
No, totally.
And that's so just like everything else, we're the early adopters on this stuff. And eventually the general public is going to enjoy these stories.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
That's going to happen.
And it was really, so I've been working on the museum stuff for decades, all the way along, and really trying to document, even just with my own memories, and trying to dig things out and figuring out those things. And lucky enough to have known most every single person personally.
Yeah.
And again,
nuts.
not because I'm anything special, only because I was just happened to be lucky enough to be there
and you're paying attention
and meet them.
That's true.
and meet them when nobody cared.
Sure.
And to then and to build a relationship and try to figure that out. The only people that I've never known Dimitri, but pretty much everybody else.
Isn't he from right around here?
He's Utah.
Oh yeah, he's Utah. Sorry, I'm thinking.
Oh yeah, no
Salt
problem.
Lake. I'm there in 2 days.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, and so that but everybody else, and I did go out and try to find some people at the beginning of this when I forged this alliance with the Colorado Ski Museum at the time, which is Colorado's official ski museum around since 1976, funded, established, not funded by the state or anything, but with members and memberships and fundraisers and all of that stuff, in a facility,
and lots of goodwill from ski enthusiasts,
lots of goodwill, and maybe not so much on the snowboard side, but the people that ran the museum and that
were too early.
We're very interested in preserving the history and talking about it, and very welcoming to the opportunity to possibly do that. And so then it was just a matter of reaching out to the snowboard community, a couple people in particular, David Alden, Kurt Olesic, and Kevin Kinnear had kind of come back to me from this massive email thing that I'd sent. There were like 3 people who really wanted to be involved. And so we kind of worked together, and between us all, I mean, David is OG, building board with Jake, like he's done so much over the years.
Yeah.
And so he knew the holes that I didn't know as well personally. He knew.
Cool.
And so we were just able to actually go to all of our friends and heroes, and where there's a lot of people with a lot of good collections, but these are Tom's boards. These are the ones he made with his hands. These are Jake's boards. Things. These were Chucky's boards that they made.
And
and didn't just make, but made for all of us after 15 iterations of things that didn't work.
Totally.
We got the ones that worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's just so interesting to see the process and to know, especially again, pre-internet, pre-anything, what it actually took to create something that actually worked really well.
Right. There's an interesting trend in snowboard collecting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a collector when you'd see a snowboard at a garage sale for $5 and it's a Santa Cruz Tau, and you're like, I might ride that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like all the boards that I got were either, just like $5 fines, $10 fines, free. I got a free rank with that's sitting in in my basement right now that just someone put it on Craigslist. Like, anyone want this old
totally
board with a Gibson guitar on it?
Use Snowboard.
Yes, I'll take it. It's free. Totally. Okay, thank you. But at that time, you could get pretty much, there's a really big community with the what's Vintage Snowboard Trader.
Yep.
And I don't know how it is now. I'm sure it's still fairly much like this, but if you really wanted a board like that Nitro Diablo 186 that I'm looking at right here, if that was your goat, if that was your unicorn, you had this huge group of people that was kind of looking out for you and going, oh, here, there's one over here.
Yeah.
And it's $20 and I'll buy it and shipping to you is $80 or whatever.
Yeah, no, totally.
But it's gone to like the newer group that's always interesting to me is like snowboard value, whatever that one is. Like, what's my board worth kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Vintage snowboard estimates.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And I'll look on that and be like, well, what is a ketchup mustard Craig Kelly worth these days? Because 10 years ago it was like $200. It was going to be mint.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's got to be maybe not ever mounted. No binding rash. Cool story. No demo. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, totally.
And now it's like a broken Craig Kelly to put on your wall is like $800
yeah,
or
no,
something.
Oh, for sure. You look at boards that were trash to ride, and people are collecting them like they're like this, again, like goat of some sort. And the boards were literally trash, but again, that's collecting, I guess.
You mentioned D23, and there were some boards there where we probably brought in 20 boards to the shop, maybe 30. The warranty rate was very high.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine most of those, even the Joyride board that you have here, that's a good one. That Dale's board would not have broken, but the flower pot boards had a high warranty.
Those did have a high warranty, but I wouldn't put those in the category of
none of those are
trash,
crap, right?
No,
because they were progressive.
I'm talking about foam core snowboards from the weird '80s period. When certain brands were making wood core, certain brands were making foam core, and somebody won that battle.
Yeah,
and just so some of those and boards, like, it's crazy. Like you'll drive around, and there was a time like up here in the in the mountains, like where you were today, I think, like old cabins and stuff, and you just see there'd be a back just nailed to the side of the house because it was like somebody's, it was just
like
skis.
See skis.
You see skis.
Old skis.
I know some. I'm not going to mention them here, but I know some places just up in the mountains where people have made fences out of skis.
Yeah,
and there's snowboards on the fence that are going for $1,000 right now on eBay, and they're just like part of somebody's fence. You could just go on the side of the street right now and go get it.
You could probably even legitimately go up to the door, knock on the door, tell the guy, look, I'll give you $50 and replace these with some broken ass skis I got at the thing.
No, it's totally right. But it's so the long story short in all of this is that the giving, but my way to give back has been to try to dig that history out and actually talk about it again, coming back to the Colorado as the neutral ground from a neutral perspective, and just dig out the boards, get them from the people who made them.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this isn't something that somebody could buy in a store, because these boards that I was just showing you, some of Tom's collection
prototypes,
and
unfinished stuff from the factory,
and barely started stuff, just that show his
handwriting, his doodles, all that,
and all
stuff.
of his dimensions and all of his. Because again, what did it take? Especially then, when you literally, if you wanted a snowboard, you had to make one with your with your hands, right?
Yeah.
And if you wanted something better, you had to make it. And so again, in this sort of initial stage of the reach out, and that's where we got so many of these. And like you're talking about the Diablo, like you can find those. You can't find Quin's Diablo. And there it is, right?
Yeah.
Because
yes.
And so all of the boards, there's a factor there of importance of that these were the actual boards from the actual riders or the actual makers, and so that's been sort of my goal. It's in showing what it took, showing what it takes, and having things that you just can't, you're just not going to find anywhere else.
They're priceless.
Craig Kelly's boards.
That Craig's board, holy shit.
Yeah, so we have the and a lot of these things are on loan. Like, these aren't my boards. I'm the caretaker.
Yep.
And the museum's the caretaker of them.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's on loan, because we wouldn't even ask for hey, give me those boards. Like, no, we want to show them, we want to celebrate them, right? And so, so Craig's boards, so Brian Kelly had put those on loan with us. So we have one of Craig's mystery airs, that's that actually in the screen print says mystery air, which none of them did. There were only like 3 of those, I think, and it's only Craig's stance in the insert pattern,
right?
Because it was literally Craig's board. We have the blacktop, which is the same board, but when he was in the lawsuit, the Dorfman versus Burton,
absolutely,
that whole thing where Craig couldn't ride a board with graphics, so that's Craig's board. And then of course we have the split board he was skinning on when he was caught in the avalanche and passed away with the broken left ski and the whole thing. It's just like, and those are the things for me to be able to not only, I don't, again, there's no ownership of these things. It's sharing it and letting people understand the stories. And
you're not a collector for money.
No,
and this is going to go up in value, and we're going to sell it for $1 million when it's worth. No,
I mean that has never been the goal, and I've never collected things with that as the intention. It's always just been, okay, I want to tell the actual real story.
Cool.
And I don't want, and again, the artifacts and the dates, of course people can contest things, they can do all the things, but we've managed over now 15 years or 20 years to pretty compelling case.
Yeah.
Or at least know the stories behind a lot of these things.
Yeah, you convinced me on the Sims thing.
Yeah,
100%.
and the boards going back into in the 30s, the Wicklund boards, which are actually called, the company was called Bunker, and the board was actually called the Snow Surf.
Wow.
And so Verdon Wicklund was one of the partners, but the Bergeson brothers, Harvey and Gunnar, were the other side of that. So there were 2 families involved in those snowboards, and I tracked down Donald Bergeson, who's the son of one of the Bergeson brothers, and he has all of the correspondence from the wood bending company in 1934. All of the trademark when they're talking about it being a snow surf, all of the sales materials, the trade show. They did a trade show in Chicago, in the 30s. They have the rejection letter from Wilson Sporting Goods saying that they didn't like, and so it's like, and all the footage and they have a patent. It's just like
uncontestable.
It is, but people still like to think that it was just Jake trying to prove Tom wasn't first.
Right,
you know what I mean? It's just
right.
People get so crazy and so ridiculous, and all of these things, and
I don't think Jake really put any effort into proving that he was first. I think he did exactly what you did, and he pulled out a board from the 20s and just went. It
was too good at the time, and putting it under glass at the trade show, and then having the footage. And people were like, that footage is not real. It's like, well, actually it is, because the photos of the brothers riding it, they're from the 30s.
They're real people.
They're the people who made these things and really tried to actually make a snowboard.
There was something going on with Tom on that metal board that he made. I remember seeing an ad where he claimed the date of the picture was, it couldn't have possibly been that time. Like, he's wearing nylon gaiters that were from the 70s, and he's saying this is a picture of me from 64 or something.
Who knows?
But it just added fuel to the fire of, I think he was playing with it. I think he was like, he was like, you know what, if it pisses Jake off, then let's print something that's just crazy. Who cares?
It's not like those guys really were that good of friends.
No.
So
right.
Of course you're going to do that to people.
Right.
But also, I mean, again, going back to those boards from the 60s, I mean, Tom Sims was Steve Link's babysitter. And like, you can track people down. We tracked down a bunch of people who saw Tom riding a snowboard in the 60s.
Got it.
And later became his college roommate.
Right.
And then they all started making snowboards.
Right.
And that whole trail went dead in the 60s and 70s. Those guys didn't do anything with snowboarding. They didn't care.
Right.
They just happened to have these snowboards that we went out and verified Tom's stories, and they're like, oh, and I still have this board I made in 1972. You should see it. It's made of all fiberglass, and it's got like a psychedelic eye on it because it's got like psychedelic, and so they sent them to us, and we got the stories, and it's just so again, yeah, of course.
And thanks for doing that, because it is if it's just hearsay from people, like I've heard I've heard it a lot, and I was telling you this at supper too, is that there's a story of Jake as told by Donna and his family that's now documented, that's out there, which is proof of what I was saying before. People are ready to see the history of snowboarding, and the general public is ready to invest and watch it. Mm-hmm. So HBO made that documentary. It's really good.
Yeah, sure.
But it's definitely from one point of view. And then there's another point of view that's been written by people that dislike Burton, that just pick the high points and say, well, Jake was this guy. He tried to sue for the patent of the snowboard, and then for bindings. And then, he did a bunch of weird, kooky stuff. He said it was going to be, people really love that one. People really love to say he thought it was going to be racing only because he was from Vermont and he was a ski racer, and he went to University of Colorado.
Yeah, in Boulder. Yeah.
For ski racing, right?
Sure.
Like, so it's like, but it's the opposite side. It's like people trying to take the piss out of the guy who was at the top a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's skewed.
Well,
in
at the
that
same
other way.
time,
right?
Tom was calling snowboards ski boards.
So
it's like you can.
Who cares?
Yeah,
right, exactly.
And was very adamant that they were going to be called ski boards.
But it's so satisfying when somebody says a statement like, Jake may have invented the snowboard, but Tom invented the snowboarder.
Yeah,
that feels good to say.
It does feel,
but
good
it's
to
not
say.
right.
It's not.
But I mean, it's like, don't say anything about Jake. Tom invented the snowboarder.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And you know what? All I know is without each of those people, without the tension, without the, without Mike and Pete in the Northwest, and without, Chris and Bev Sanders in Tahoe, and without Dimitri, of course, and without Stevie Dara on the East Coast, like, snowboarding wouldn't be what it is right now. So you know what? Everybody contributed.
Yes.
Like, how about that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's way better.
Yeah, and like, who cares? Because everybody bit everybody, and everybody still bites everybody. Like, if it's a good idea, it's a great, it's a good idea, and so take it and then improve upon it. And and without that, we'd still be riding these boards that we're looking at a lot of these things. I mean, you have to find a way to look at what other people do and let it inspire you, and then one up them, make it better. Yeah. And that's how snowboarding progressed so fast, so quick. Yeah. And then that went totally the other way, where skiing then was biting snowboarding. Like, you know what I mean? And so
totally,
who cares? You know, I'm and it's funny too. I mean, that whole thing of like skiing versus snowboarding and all this stuff. I'm just personally so over all of it. Yeah. And so, it has been, those are the things that I've always tried to do my whole, I mean, it's not really a career because it's the thing I do and I love it, but I've always tried to, try to break some of those barriers, like this museum project was a big one. I mean, getting on the board of directors at SIA was a big one back then. Yes. Because then it really was sort of skiers versus snowboarders in the business and the whole thing. And then I tried to break down this barrier to get, the Colorado Ski Museum to be the Colorado Ski and Snowboard Museum, which we finally got. And now it's the Colorado Snow Sports Museum. So we finally got it there. You know what I mean? And so that's what I've been kind of trying to do, even past those last brands that I worked on in my sort of past few years of career. I've been trying to continue to sort of break down some of those barriers, innovate and break down some of the barriers and maybe not unite that chasm so much, but just not care about it, right? And just not pay attention to it.
Yeah, it does have the same kind of energy as racism or sexism or whatever. Like it's just exclusionary for no real reason.
No real reason. Yeah.
I mean, I was not that stoked when all the Olympic free skier guys had their had their week at Mount Hood because they like way more woo on their jumps.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, and they're intimidating to be around because they're so fucking good.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
But there was a mad respect there.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching these guys and they look like snowboarders from the early 90s.
Yeah.
They're wearing baggy clothes. Their jackets are unzipped. They're being lazy. They're riding in trains that are way too close together, very dangerous, doing huge, insane tricks. And I'm like, those are the kids of now.
Yeah.
Those
now you're fanning out a little too hard on skiing. Got to call you out a little bit here.
All right.
I'm still not going to ski.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just kidding.
I can't do. I still don't even splitboard. More just because it's not enjoyable for me. It's too much work.
Splitboarding?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's my new thing because traffic.
So you're a skier is what it comes down to. No wonder
only
you're
going up, dude. Only
skiers.
going up. No, splitboarding has been like my second, like the second coming of snowboarding for me. Actually, quite honestly, because like we were talking about this, like especially, I can hit on Colorado for the traffic. I mean, any ski area now, any whatever,
everywhere. It's everywhere.
Of course, it's everywhere,
Yep.
and so. From my house in Boulder, I can try to go like the Central Mountain. So everything that people know about is Colorado, Breckenridge and Copper Mountain and Vail and Keystone and, all Beaver Creek, all that stuff. Loveland, it's all central.
Mm-hmm.
It's all on I-70. I-70 is the one street to get there.
Yeah.
And everybody that's moved to Colorado in the last 40 years has moved here to go to ski areas.
Yeah.
So it's a madness trying to get up there. We have the little ski area, Eldora, right? 18 mile, which I love, but now it's an Icon Pass Mountain, so you can't roll up there at 9 anymore. You have to leave Boulder by 7.
Yeah,
yeah. So it's like, painful. So the splitboard thing has been from my doorstep. It can be like if I wanted to go to Vail on a Saturday morning, I would have to leave at like 4:30 in the morning or 5. To get there at a reasonable hour to actually get some time in.
Yeah.
But I can, in less than an hour, be at Rocky Mountain National Park, going the other way with no traffic and just being out in the most amazing, like beautiful nature experience with untracked snow, with, super mellow. They have crazy stuff, but low angle, safe.
Yeah.
Powder laps with friends. A lot of them are skiers. It's just like my whole thing is. And I love going and doing. I still love all parts of snowboarding, but the last few years, maybe in my old age, I've mellowed out a little bit. But I absolutely love not only splitboarding, but just even good snows like around, like I was showing you some spots like around Boulder that I've ridden years and years and years, and I just found a new spot that I'm like dying for the snow.
Yeah,
because we don't get that much snow in Boulder, but we get a foot 5 or 6 times a year.
Rad.
And that'll, like, the spot I just found is in the shade, I think, all winter.
Nice.
And I'm just like, and it's like right here, and I'm so hyped. So,
Rad.
Anyway, yeah, like the whole just getting out there and doing it. I don't even care what most people would call like, oh, that's not even great. It's just like, well, yeah, you know what? I just got 40 powder turns.
Yeah.
And I could see my house.
Yep.
Like, okay,
Absolutely.
that's totally fine with me.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. And then it's full circle because it's the same place I learned to snowboard before.
That's right.
We were allowed to ride lifts and we had edges. So
yeah.
The passion's still there, and it reignites it every year.
It's so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Course.
It's just insane fun.
No, totally.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold off on the splitboard thing until I don't need it. Because I feel like we're going to have some drones soon. Some drones that we just like, dude, you hang on.
Flying cars, man.
Flying cars.
That's what I'm going to start doing because I can't afford like, like a condo somewhere, Yeah. And so I've got this whole grad plan now that I'm just going to find like a little plot of land that has no access.
There you go.
And I'm just going to put it like a concrete pad.
Yep.
And I'm going to just land my flying car.
Yeah, so concrete pad, solar panels that trickle charge like an array of batteries.
Yeah, outhouse.
And you just land your flying, let's dream big. It's you're flying Winnebago, right? You're going to your flying camper van.
Yeah.
Down, set it on the pad and be there by yourself.
Dude,
and then there'll be an auxiliary flying thing that you can sit on and get to the top, and then it'll follow cam you the whole way down. Yeah. And then if you get in an avalanche, it'll come down, it'll dig you out right away.
Or it'll just pick you up before you can just have a cord. Or
yeah. I'm holding out for that stuff because the splitboarding thing's a lot of work.
But you know what? It's really fun. It's really strange. I'm so far from an athlete. Like I really don't like working out.
Yeah.
But there's something just cathartic about it. Like
it's faster than what I do. Like the guys that are splitboarding are getting 2 laps for every one of my boot pack laps.
Yeah, because you're just boot packing it.
Yep.
Or do you have like verts or something? Or I
have verts, but where I go, I don't really need them.
You just walk up in the other.
It's just yeah. And actually, I'm pivoting where I go.
Yeah.
I got a sled last year, so I'm gonna go quality over quantity this year.
Yeah.
Because I got acclimatized to these new crowded resorts.
Yeah.
Like where I've thought about it last year where I'm going, okay, look, I'm getting up at 6:00.
Yeah.
To get at the parking lot at 7 of the place that's 20 minutes from my house that doesn't open till 9.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're filling that time with make a pot of coffee. And,
of course.
And goof around and telling jokes. And sometimes there's Bailey in the coffee. Now I'm a little bit drunk. And then we missed the start because everybody's been stacking up for an hour and a half to wait for the lift to open.
Oh my God.
And then it's just trash.
No, totally.
So I was like, wait, why am I putting all this effort?
Yeah, sled's a great answer as well. Like Vail Pass, Buffalo Pass, Rabbit Ears. I mean, there's amazing sled access stuff here too, and we've been riding that for years and years as well.
Yeah, I'm watching Chad and what Chad's doing. Yeah. Chad Otterstrom knows what's up.
Oh well, Chad's I mean, he's got Fat Chad's Tavern and like all like he's got the like right where that is. He's splitting,
Oh yeah, he's splitting.
But he does it every day.
Every single
day.
And
he's just like a machine.
Ka-ching. Yeah, like he's
machine up, machine down, machine up, machine down. It's amazing. I mean, talk about somebody who's committed.
100% committed. That's it. Yeah. He's always he posted all those pictures. I bought his book. He had a book of like a beautiful picture from every day in February.
I didn't know I had no idea he has a book.
Yeah, it's super sick. It's like a coffee table book.
Oh, I'll hit him up.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
it's absolutely beautiful.
I run into him like 6 or 7 times a year, just down at events. We were just at a wedding. Yeah, Raul from Satellite, the local shop, got married and
Rad.
Had a super good time. And like those are fun because there's so many people that are from here, so you'll run into, Pat A or like
Rad.
Just and we just every time just have those reunion sort of events all the time. It's super good.
Too fun, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all the work that you've done over the years on all the different brands and trying to document the history of snowboarding in a, like I say, a neutral way. It's very refreshing, actually.
Doing my best and just trying to again tell the real story.
Yeah.
And and I was showing like in the process now of like it maybe it's my curse, I don't know, but launching a new brand, right? And so it's this time because it's just me, and of course I've got people. That's not a really nice way to say it. I mean, it was me who just started this. I didn't start it with other people.
Yeah,
I didn't start it with my brother. I didn't start it, and so it's actually my first time to do just my ideas, but it's actually really interesting too to be able to like look back at. I use all of this as reference points, and I look back and I use twists as a reference point. So again, it's like all of the people. Again, it's like supporting me, even if they're not working with me on a day-to-day basis. Like I'm making a magazine and I'm making all this stuff, and I'm like, wait, I did that, or So it's. All of this again is just like my whole point in everything I do is just to find a way to maybe inspire people that they can actually go out and do it themselves, and then I just draw on it for my own inspiration and for my own work I do.
Super sick, dude.
Yeah. So if anybody's ever in Colorado, the museum's in Vail, because the town of Vail gives they basically donate the space.
Rad.
Because it's incredibly expensive and there's like staff and it's all volunteer for me. I don't, I lose money on it, but that's okay because it's a passion. But it is free. for people to come in.
Rad.
We have we just redid it 2 years ago, the entire museum, and have a really good timeline now, starting in the 30s and basically ending at the first Olympics. As far as sort of how did snowboarding get to be what it is. And then we have all these boards that I'm working on right now, this Tom Sims exhibit, of, again, from the first idea to some of his last things that he did, and what was the thought process over a couple decades.
Yeah, because you've gotten to talk to him about it.
Oh yeah,
that's
totally.
incredible.
Yeah, and luckily, that was actually, and that'll be the last thing I say, I guess, is that now, of course, with Jake, it's more meaningful. But with Tom, we were able to actually do the first museum launch and all of that just a few months actually before he passed away.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was like, I didn't know it at the time that the work was actually important.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was fun, and it's
Yeah.
super fun rehashing old stories and hanging out with Tom and doing all that stuff, and digging out these stories from him. But who knew that some of that was the last time that I would see him and be able to talk to him, and thank goodness we were able to sort of do that and document as much of it as we could. So
yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom, of course.
That's a great
thanks,
one.
Tom. Thanks, Jake. Thanks
Jake.
to everybody, right?
I think that's the point of this whole interview. Is like, thanks to every single pioneer that put their heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
And, some people won, some people lost, some people are still going and hoping to win.
Yeah.
Some people are, completely left in obscurity.
It's totally right. And for me, those people that maybe were more obscure or weren't at the time, but now, thanks Chris Pappas, thanks Dave Dowd. I mean, those are the guys for me.
Yeah.
That made all the difference, right?
Yeah.
Just personally. And so again, this is just a chance to kind of give back.
Yeah, that's super rad.
Yep.
Yeah, I could see a future where there's even more pieces, like we'll get you some Kevin Young stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was really early influential stuff.
Totally, yeah.
Some dev stuff.
We need more space.
We need a huge space.
Yeah, well, and this is, if anybody's interested that's listening.
Yeah.
We do outreach stuff, and I'm always, having now gone through it for a long time, happy to talk to anybody who's talking about trying to do something like this.
Yes.
And the economics of it and how hard it is and how easy certain things are, whatever. But also, really the next frontier for me, I think, is, and it's actually where this was going to start. It's to do it all digitally and have a digital repository of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And go out to people and, hey, Chris Pappas, let's tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have as much space as you want. It's the internet. You can have as much space as you want. You can put all the content.
Yeah.
Just tell it. And so that's, I've had this thing that I've been working towards, before I had an actual museum, and that was the thing it was going to be. And now it's the thing that I want it to be.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to physically walk through the door somewhere.
Yep.
But it's something that you could actually, people can draw from and
talk to Jamie Mossberg. He's been parallel thinking on this for a long time.
Cool.
And actually, any person that I've talked to that shoots on film, that's got a box of or 10 boxes of slides somewhere that they're afraid is going to get
1,000
fire,
boxes. Totally,
flood, or just wear out from just being old. Kevin Kinnear was talking about his cassette tapes of his interviews.
Yeah, sure.
Like there's all these interviews that could be digitized, but it's going to take a team of volunteers, like a million monkeys working at a million typewriters.
That's basically what it takes. And even then it's still not free. There's so much. And so anyway, if anybody wants to ever reach out, I'm easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me on Instagram.
Dope.
It's just Trent, at Trent Bush.
You
can find me. It's pretty easy. And so I would very much appreciate anybody reaching out if they feel like they want to, or if they ever want to ask questions about what we have in the museum or any specific thing.
Some pretty cool
shit. We're trying to be. We're really trying to be a resource, and a resource of as much of the truth as we possibly can glean out of everybody's mouth. So
awesome,
sweet dude.
Thanks, Trent.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
FNRad shout-outs this week to Trent Bush. Thanks for taking me through the snow sports archives. That was an all-time life event for me. holding Tom's 1965 homemade woodshop board and Craig's FE. There are no words. Special thanks to all you listeners out there who listened till the end, and be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.